Hello friends, we are here in Mark chapter 13 today. So most of Mark chapter 13 is what we call the Olivet Discourse. If you've been walking through the whole Bible with me, you might remember me going through the Olivet Discourse when we were in the book of Matthew. And it took up 2 chapters. And this is only 1 chapter, and it's a small chapter at that. I know yesterday it was a pretty long one, but even though it's a small chapter, it is a doozy. And there's not a great way to teach this, because there's a lot of things that you can teach in the Bible and you can say, this is exactly what it means. I know exactly what Jesus was trying to convey here. And you might not get all of it, but you can get a rough idea of what Jesus was trying to teach. And this one, there's a part in this chapter where it says, let the reader understand. So I don't know exactly what that means, but the way that I perceive it to mean is that they were writing things that even they didn't understand. Like Jesus said it, Mark wrote it down, it was probably conveyed by Peter, and it's not clear. It's something that will be illuminated as it happens, because Jesus in this chapter is being prophetic. So what's happening is, first, it's still the week of Passover. It's a big celebration there in Jerusalem, and Jesus is talking to his disciples, and they're really sightseeing. It's probably the end of the day, and they're looking around and they're just marveling at the temple. And one of his disciples says, look at all these amazing stones. Look at how great this temple is. And Jesus just kind of throws a bombshell out there, and he's like, yeah, you see how great this is? He said, pretty soon there will not be one of these stones standing upon another. And I'm led to believe that they were just kind of like, all right, should we ask about this or should we not? Must have been this awkward situation. But later on, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Now, the Mount of Olives is right next to the temple. Like, as soon as you get out of the temple, in the main gate, you can go out and the Mount of Olives is right there. And so they go up the mountain and they start asking Jesus. Now, it's not all of them. It's just the main 4. The first 4. There's Andrew, Peter, James, and John. And they say, when are these things going to happen? Now, in the book of Matthew, it says, when are these things going to happen? And tell us about the end of the age. I think they saw this as one thing. It must be that if the temple is going to be destroyed, that must be the end of the world. But, they're actually 2 separate events. So, Jesus starts telling about these things. Now, we can look at this, and people divide this up in different ways. Many people look at it and say, a lot of this has already happened. Many people say most of this has already happened. And I'm under the opinion that a lot of these things have already happened. When the destruction of the temple happens, everybody believes that. The destruction of the temple happened, and there was some amazing persecution that was happening around the time of the destruction of the temple of those first century Jews. Now, this is in 70 AD. And I'm not going to take a hard line on this. It's hard to divide out. I went into a little bit more in depth when I went through the book of Matthew. If you're really interested in this, I highly recommend there is a course by D.A. Carson. It's not really a course. It's like a handful of YouTube videos that you can watch. I put a link when I was in the book of Matthew. I'll put a link here. It's really good. He basically goes through all the strengths and weaknesses of all of the points of view. So he talks about a great tribulation. He talks about the day of the Lord. He talks about the the second coming, and all of these things. Everybody's trying to figure out, where they go. Now, I divide it up in a way that I think that he's talking about basically all the things in order, and then he kind of stops, and then he goes back and he talks about all the things in order again. That is my interpretation. That is also what D.A. Carson kind of says that he leans toward too, but I'm not going to be, I'm not saying this is the way. I'm just saying that this is the way I understand it. So the reason that we know that he's talking about two separate things is because one of the things he says, when you see all these signs, you know that this is about to happen. And he talks about the fig tree. He's like, when you see the fig tree starting to bloom, you know that summer is coming. And when you see all these signs happening, you can know that, the time for this tribulation is coming. When you see the abomination that causes desolation. And so there's certain things that we can look at these signs and we can say, okay, these are going to come. But there are other things that he says that it will come like a thief in the night. That when these things happen, that nobody knows, not the angels, not Jesus, but only God the Father knows when these things will happen. So there's two separate things. One you'll know is coming, and the other will come without you knowing when it's going to happen. So I believe the things that are going to happen, the thing that's going to happen next is you're not going to see signs for it. It's just going to happen. And that's why in this book he really just uses one parable. But in the book of Matthew, he mentions a whole bunch of parables. And they basically amount to the same thing that this one says, and that's that there was a man, and he wanted somebody to keep guard, and he basically says, stay awake. I want you to stay awake, because you don't know when the master is coming back. And so that's kind of where it leaves you in this chapter. Like, stay awake. You don't know when the master is coming back. And so what does that mean for us? I think for us, this is the most important part of the passage. Stay awake. You don't know when the master is coming back. I think it's just prudent to say, you don't know when the master is coming back, so be prepared. Be awake might mean be alive in Christ. Live your life knowing that he's coming back and that he can be back any second, and make sure that you have a spiritual life. Make sure that you have a relationship with Christ. So that is Mark chapter 13. All right, have a great day. Bye.